Okay, welcome to today's webinar, All PMOs Are Not the Same. I'm your speaker, Kevin Aguanno. This is an interesting topic for me. I've been involved in the creation and management of PMOs of various sizes over the years in many different organizations. And I think you'll enjoy some of the thoughts I have to share on this and some of the research that's been done. I will be taking questions at the end. There'll be time for a Q&A session, so please save your questions or you can type them into the chat window and we can get to them a little bit later in the presentation. So first off, I want to talk about what is a PMO. The ISO 21503 committee working on the new international standard Guide to the Governance of Projects, Programs, and Portfolios has noted that project and program governance is distinct from organizational governance. At the project and program level, governance is focused on the achievement of more narrowly focused objectives, while organizational governance is focused on achieving longer-term, enterprise-wide objectives and covers ongoing operational concerns, not just short-term project concerns. Also note that this committee noted that the portfolio management practices are more closely aligned with organizational governance than project and portfolio governance, as portfolio management concerns itself with operational issues, such as optimizing use of shared resources. PMI defines a PMO as an organizational structure that standardizes the project-related governance processes and facilitates the sharing of resources, methodologies, tools, and techniques. So there is a governance component here that's recognized, as well as the provision of information and tools, etc. Depending on the type of PMO, it may have an influence over any or all of projects, programs, and portfolios, meaning it may be involved in both project and organizational governance. There's essentially three types of PMOs. Many researchers have settled on a model that show that PMOs have three classes of functions. Directing. Some PMOs own project execution and are directly responsible for the success or failure of the projects under their care. The project managers tend to report into these PMOs, and the PMO managers are ultimately responsible for the project outcomes. We say that these PMOs direct the project. The next group is supporting. Other PMOs don't directly own the project delivery. Rather, project delivery is the responsibility of other business units. In this model, the PMO is responsible for providing support in the form of training, templates, and coaching to project managers reporting into the business units that own the delivery of the projects. And the third function is controlling. This third type of PMO is a modification of the directing PMO. Rather than managing individual projects directly, however, these PMOs provide overall governance models covering the funding and approval of projects throughout their life cycles, as well as providing overall methodologies and enterprise-level standards for projects, such as business case processes, project launch approval processes, and similar governance controls. Note that some PMOs are combinations of these three, with a smaller number supporting all three functional classes. PMOs may also operate at different levels of influence. The project office is a PMO created for a specific project or program and which is only concerned for the health and successful delivery of that single project. It's often headed by the project manager and may include supporting roles such as financial controllers, assistant project managers, sometimes called project control officers or PCOs, dedicated schedulers, procurement specialists, and similar administrative roles. The next level up is a project support office, often called a divisional PMO or a functional PMO. These provide support to one division of an organization, trying to provide supporting functions to the PMs of projects within the division. These PMOs generally support the portfolio of projects within the division, monitor the health of the projects within that division, and provide portfolio status updates to the leaders of the division. They may also provide processes and templates that have been tailored to the specific needs of that division. The next level is the Project Management Center of Excellence, or PMCOE. These usually provide project management standards for an entire organization and try to build project management capabilities of the organization, but typically these don't actively manage the projects themselves. This group may develop and deploy standard project methodologies, project management tools, and training. The group may also measure project management maturity of different departments or divisions, as well as the project management competence of individuals. And the final level of PMO is the Enterprise PMO, or EPMO. Typically, an Enterprise PMO operates as a project support office across all divisions of an organization. With enterprise-wide responsibilities, these PMOs usually try to avoid responsibility for the success of individual projects, or else they'd be micromanaging all projects within the enterprise, quite a daunting task. Rather, EPMOs are responsible for governance and standards applicable to all projects in the enterprise. And like a PMCOE, they may be developing standardized project management tools and training. They may be responsible for measuring portfolio health and project management maturity. So when defining a PMO, you need to consider both the type of functions it will provide, like support, direction, or control, and the level of influence, project only, or the entire enterprise's portfolio. While PMOs of different types will provide various functions, they generally fall into a few key groups. My own research has grouped all these PMO functions into 4 key areas. First, HR-related functions. This group includes the PMO functions related to the acquisition, development, and maintenance of the project managers within the organization. Next, practice-related functions. This group of functions includes the development and promotion of methodologies and templates, as well as training in the use of those methodologies and audits for process compliance. The third grouping is governance functions. This group of functions includes those related to the development and management of processes for governing projects and programs, including project selection, project funding approval, and other project governance steps, auditing against those governance processes, and perhaps even participating in the governance processes where applicable. And the fourth type is promotional functions. This final group includes those related to sharing or promoting project management related news, policy changes, lessons learned, and even granting awards to the best PMs in the organization, providing role models for those trying to grow in the profession. So my discussion today is going to be looking at each of these 4 related groupings of functions and discussing the specific functions within each area. First, I'm going to look at HR-related functions. For the first HR-related function, some PMOs provide, let's look at the Providing Career Development Guidance function. These PMOs help define the career path for project managers within the organization. In some cases, they define tiers of project management seniority, differentiating between different job titles, such as Project Control Officer, Assistant PM, Project Manager, Senior Project Manager, Project Executive, etc. And they note the experience and certifications required to achieve each level. These PMOs often create a PM career development roadmap and disseminate it across the organization. And in some cases, they create parallel learning roadmaps showing the different courses required to complete the learning requirements at each level, as is seen here for one example for one of my clients. Aligned with the career development guidance of the first HR function, some PMOs also have developed and administer their own internal project management certification or accreditation process. For these organizations, generic project management certifications, such as PMI's Project Management Professional, or PMP, and the IPMA's Certified Senior Project Manager, or IPMA Level B, these are good, but do not address the specifics of a particular industry or how the organization wants their own projects managed. These organizations create their own internal project management certification or assessment processes that examine whether the project manager understands the organization's internal project management policies, processes, and systems. Many organizations also distinguish between knowledge and competence. Certifications, such as the PMP, primarily assess for project management knowledge. While they do have experience requirements, there is no attempt to ensure that the experience was earned being a successful project manager. Competence assessments go that extra step further. Organizations put competence assessments in place to ensure that they know who are the best project managers in the organization, the ones who've been successful in the past and the ones who will likely be successful in the future. Let me give a couple examples. The Bank of Montreal in Canada created a project management accreditation processes that use PMI's PMP credential as a starting point. Beyond that, project managers need to know the bank's internal project management processes and tools and have a strong track record of success to be accredited at higher project management levels. So the PMP is just an entry criterion into that certification process. IBM created a 4-tier internal certification process that starts with junior project managers at the associate project manager level. With more experience, training, and success, a project manager can be certified as an advisory project manager. With an in-depth competence assessment, similar to IPMA's Level B certification, IBM project managers can become certified as senior project managers. And those with the most experience, training, and success can be certified as executive project managers. Other organizations do not want to create their own certification regimen, but align their career paths to an existing standard. For example, Coal Engineering in Canada aligns their project management career levels to the 4 International Project Management Association or IPMA certification levels. As project managers wish to progress in this organization, they need to achieve higher levels of IPMA certification. While there are many ways of approaching the issue of internal certifications and accreditations, PMOs in many organizations see the creation, promotion, and administration of such programs as within their purviews. Some PMOs, especially those of the directive type mentioned earlier, actually own the resources that will manage the projects. All the project managers report into the PMO for HR management purposes. These PMOs are responsible for all of the regular human resource functions of managing the project managers, much like any other employee. They are responsible to ensure that there are enough project managers to deliver the projects, that the project managers have the right skills that the organization needs, etc. And for the last HR-related function, PMOs may be responsible for coaching and mentoring individual PMs to help them grow their skills, stay motivated, and connect to the larger PM community within the organization. So those are the HR-related functions. Now let's look at some of the practice-related functions, our second quadrant. The first practice-related function is developing PM methodologies. Some PMOs are responsible for the development and maintenance of the official project management methodology aligned to the project governance lifecycle in the organization. This may include the development of templates for typical project artifacts and the maintenance of a methodology reference repository. And on the screen you can see an example of one from a past client. Next, some PMOs are responsible for development and delivery of standardized training aligned with the organizational project management methodology. The formal training may take the form of classroom training, scheduled webinars, or instructor-led online e-learning. Sometimes training is just not methodology related, but specific to project management practices used within the organization, such as risk management, stakeholder analysis, people change management, etc. PMOs may perform assessments from time to time to determine the training needs of the organization in order to schedule the right training topics for any particular year. PMOs may also provide informal learning opportunities to support the just-in-time training needs of the project managers they are supporting. Such training may include on-demand, just-in-time learning, job aids, and other reference materials, social learning opportunities such as PM gatherings and networking events, online communities of practice and discussion forums, and learning opportunities embedded in the processes such as providing direct on-the-job support from subject matter experts or coaches, rotating assignments to build skills and experience, and participating in quality circles, among others. Few PMOs provide informal learning across all of these areas, but a PMO should consider a number of informal learning offerings across multiple delivery modes to ensure that all staff have the support they need to learn and apply new techniques. Project financial auditing is our next practice area, and this is an area where PMOs are often responsible for crawling through the accounting records for a project to make sure that it's on time and that its forecasts are aligned with what the data is actually showing. Financial auditing is perhaps one of the less fun areas of running a PMO, but it may be absolutely essential to the business itself, and that's one that many PMOs get involved in. Aside from financial auditing, another practice area is practice compliance auditing. This is when a PMO gets involved with looking at individual projects to make sure that they're following the rules and regulations and standards within the organization. They need to make sure that the right policies are being followed, that the appropriate sign-offs are in place, that the project is following a controlled, governed, or regulated process that aligns with the standards within the enterprise for controlling these types of initiatives. So these process compliance audits typically pass projects, fail them outright, or provisionally pass them with some noted errors requiring improvement. In some cases, projects are rated, at A, B, C, or D, or they're given green, red, or yellow ratings, and there may be follow-up activities and additional audits downstream depending on the rating that they receive. For example, in one large corporation that I've done work with, a project receiving a C rating will be reviewed again within 6 months. If it receives an A rating, it will never be reviewed again during the life of the project. If it receives a B rating, it might receive an annual review. And if it receives a D rating, that means the project's in deep trouble and it gets additional help, and there's almost ongoing continued mentoring and coaching throughout the life of the project with ongoing assessments throughout. So depending on the level of review, the level of surveillance and compliance auditing may be affected. So those are all of the practice-related functions of a PMO. Now let's look at some of the governance-related functions. Governance-related functions are related to which projects we should fund, how we're running those projects, are they following the proper practices. So the compliance often is looking against the governance features. So let's go a bit more deep into that. First, one of the functions of PMOs, some PMOs, is to develop project governance policies. This may include coming up with business case standards or frameworks or policies, and some of the required forms and checklists that go with that, and also who's allowed to approve a business case at what level. So it gets into project financing and controlling the approval of project budgets. They may get involved in risk management and assessing the risks of projects and coming up with governance steps to more closely monitor the higher risk projects or the ones with a larger enterprise impact. Certainly if they deal with external stakeholders versus internal stakeholders, there may be different governance requirements over those. Many organizations have rules around change management to make sure that the project-driven changes are appropriately authorized and monitored, and certainly under new regulations, Sarbanes-Oxley or the Ontario Securities Commission rules or things like that, they have to be governed appropriately, or else the top executives in the company may face legal problems. And getting into suppliers and the governance of procurement, especially, that's a growing area of problems within larger enterprises where fraud has been detected more frequently and corruption. Certainly providing governance around the procurement processes. And under the United Nations, under the United Nations guidance, there's certainly new standards now about sustainability within projects that looks at procurement as well, looking at suppliers in third world areas and making sure that we're not taking advantage of their vulnerabilities, as well as environmental regulations and things like that. So there may be some corporate governance around the procurement processes. Once we've defined what those governance processes are, we need to develop the governance processes in quite some detail. And this is getting into the process and steps and approvals for project funding approval, project launch approval, which means usually that's a summary process that gathers in the outputs of other earlier processes and making sure that all of the appropriate controls and checks and balances are in place, giving approval to launch a new initiative. Strategic alignment of projects, making sure that we're not doing projects that don't support our ongoing objectives. Also, this is an area that covers things like portfolio prioritization to make sure that we're spending the right resources on the right projects. This may also include project gating and similar functions. Aside from developing the governance processes, the PMO might participate in the governance processes, sitting in on gating committees or project review and approval boards and committees, certainly participating in the compliance audits themselves. And depending on the level of PMO, it may get involved in some of the higher level or more tactical related governance processes. And that's discussing those different levels of PMO that we identified earlier in that pyramid diagram. One of the functions of many PMOs is reporting on portfolio health. This is where they look at the health of all the various projects in the enterprise and prepare dashboards or status reports to senior management to help senior management understand the risks in these projects, what the likelihood of success is on these projects, whether they're going over or under budget, to help manage the portfolio better, to make sure that we're spending the resources on the projects that need it the most. There's many tools to do this kind of work, and it was a real trendy area several years back where there was an explosion of different tools and products and services available in the marketplace to help enterprises with this type of work. And the last of the 4 quadrants I want to look at are promotional functions. So aside from governance and practices and looking at the other elements of a PMO around HR-related functions, the PMO also has a promotional role in many cases, involved in promoting best practices, promoting successes, and building communities of practice. And I'm going to talk through those now. So the first promotional function is promoting communities of practice. This is where practitioners get together to share information, to help each other out, to build a sense of community, to share success stories and pain points, and to feel like they're often not alone, especially for project managers. In many cases, a project manager is, for their entire career, is the only one of their type on a project. Right? Mostly there's only ever one project manager on a project. There may be many other people in the various roles on the team, many engineers, many developers, many people in charge of quality, but there's usually only ever one project manager on the project. And it can get to be a very lonely role if you move from project to project to project and you don't have any peers to share lessons learned with, or to learn from, or share stories with, or just even get together after work and have a beer and just to someone to complain to who will understand and give you that emotional support as well. So one of the roles of PMOs is to help build these communities of practice within the organization so people can share their experiences and build that sense of community. Another one is to govern and manage the lessons learned process in projects. Often these are left to the end of the project, and sometimes they're even this process is often skipped or left out because many of the team members have already been released onto other projects by the time the project ends. But the PMOs that do this right spend time actually managing this process more formally. They want to enforce the collection, categorization, storing, and sharing of project lessons learned, following a process that ensures that the information is acted upon, not just ignored, and that the best practices and areas to avoid, mistakes that are commonly made that can be avoided easily in the future, that those get disseminated out to the other project teams. Often, some of these organizations at the end of a lessons learned for a large project might encourage project team members to run lunch and learn workshops to share their lessons learned. They may run an organizational lessons learned repository where people can deposit their lessons learned so that people can research them when a new project starts up to avoid common mistakes. Aside from disseminating lessons learned, they may also disseminate project management related news. They may establish and distribute promotional newsletters, websites, regular updates, community conference calls, or regular community events to share this information among their peers and make sure that the right individuals are aware of new policies and procedures, they're aware of new templates, they're aware of recent successes, and sometimes they'll share articles and webinars on best practices. And then there's project management awards. And these come in many, many different flavors. Sometimes there are individual awards recognizing the top project managers in the group or the division or the company. There may be departmental awards recognizing departmental project management maturity, right? The groups within the organization with the best overall success within their group. And then there may even be project-related awards. Aside from individuals and departments, they may recognize the top projects in the company and even possibly submit them sometimes to external awards programs such as the IPMA Project Excellence Awards and many others. So they have a promotional aspect as well to share successes, to set people up as role models, to create environments where people want to learn from the best. And that's another function of the PMO in many cases. Now, in summary, there are many different functions of a PMO, and these functions can be divided into HR, practice, governance, and promotion-related groupings, right? Like I talked about already. Now, while there's different combinations of features in each of these groupings, not all PMOs cover all functions, and which function covered depends on the type of PMO and its level of influence, whether it's looking only at a project or moving up to supporting a department or division, or being a PMCOE for an enterprise, or even being the EPMO at the top. So one of the key messages I wanted you to leave with you today is that all PMOs are not the same. Many different functions and features are available to PMOs. Many PMOs start out small, covering just one or two of these functions and grow into the others. But organizations need to understand that they don't need to be everything to everyone all at once. They can look at their level of influence, decide what type of PMO they want to be, and then select the appropriate functions that make sense within their organization in terms of its size and the organizational culture. At this point, I'd like to open up for questions and answers. Now, currently, all lines are muted. I'm going to give people an opportunity to ask some questions. There is a question window that you can type your questions into. If you can just type them in there, I'd be happy to answer the questions. One question that has come up is about PDUs. The answer is yes, you can get, if you are a PMP with PMI or have one of their other credentials, you can get PDUs for this presentation. Our formal presentation lasted 30 minutes approximately, so you can claim 0.5 of a PDU. And this one would, if you're claiming them under the PMI Talent Triangle area, this would go under technical PDUs primarily. Okay, any other questions? Please just type them into the the question window. There's also a chat window if that's easier for you. Just type them in there and I will address the questions as necessary. Okay, there's a question that's very specific to one organization's PMO. I'm not sure I should be sharing. You're giving me some corporate proprietary information in the question. I'm not sure I should read that out to the group. Maybe I'll answer your question offline. I don't want to get you in in trouble by revealing something that maybe shouldn't be shared. Another question coming up here from Daniel. Do all organizations need to have a PMO? Absolutely not. In fact, the function of a PMO largely exists as the number of project managers in the organization start to increase. If you've only got a handful of project managers, there's no need necessarily for a PMO. But as you get more and more project managers in a group, you may see some opportunities for standardizing processes, for sharing, lessons learned and best practices with each other. You may start to see more projects being properly managed or governed within your organization, and you might start to see the opportunity for having some more formalization of your own project approval processes, etc. So I don't think all organizations need a PMO, but certainly as you get into larger numbers of project managers in your organization, you may see some benefits from starting to establish even just a very beginner PMO that offers just a couple of the functions that we discussed. You'll start to see some efficiencies, and you'll start to get that sense of community, and you'll see more standardization in what you're doing. And I'll give you an example. I'm doing some work with an engineering company right now where many of their managing or consulting engineers are managing some significantly sized projects. Some of them have not had formal project management training. They've had engineering training, and some engineering training does include engineering management, so that in fairness, they may have had some project management training a long time ago, but most of them really haven't had any formal project management training, at least since they've graduated from university. So now it might be 15, 20 years later. They've learned some tricks on the streets. They're sort of self-taught project managers, as many of us end up being. But as the organization's now getting into larger projects, where you're getting into tens of millions of dollars and the clients are expecting more formality in the project management deliverables, they found they needed that level of training that gave some standardized training across the organization. So different project managers are describing things the same way, are using similar terminology, and are using some standard tools as well. So for this organization, the PMO was established to create a better definition of what the official way of managing projects in that business was, coming up with some standard deliverables, templates for some of those deliverables, and some official training on project management. And that's kind of where it stopped at the first phase. What they're planning to do in the future for their next revision or next round, probably late next year, will be putting in some more consistent portfolio reporting techniques up to senior management. Right now, senior managers would be looking at projects individually, but had no real view of what the entire portfolio of projects look like across the enterprise. And as a result, they kept running into capacity problems. So they'd take on more projects than they have people to execute with. But if they can see the entire portfolio, that might give them a better sense of the scale of the massive amount of work that's going on, often much of it in small projects that are under the radar that senior management doesn't always see. So by giving them a portfolio view, they'll make sure that they don't take on work that they can't deliver. There's another comment. It says, so that it depends on the size of organization and the size and complexity of projects. I think so. That's my opinion as an individual. If you're a small organization with a small number of PMs, you're not going to see the benefits from a PMO. It'd be a lot of extra governance without a lot of return on that investment. So certainly the larger the organization, the more a PMO seems wise. Also, if you're doing really high risk and large projects and you're doing quite, a number of them, then there may be some lessons learned and sharing between them, certainly looking at capacity and shared resourcing. These are the areas where PMOs start to really provide a lot of value, aside from developing methodologies and training people on tools and methodologies and things like that. It's even just supporting the projects through coaching and mentoring from more seasoned project managers who can be that repository of expertise. That may be an area of benefit to the business. Any more questions or comments? Somebody asked about programs. So the sort of the official definition of this is that a project is a piece of work that has, as PMI says, a start and end date and defined scope of work. A program can be defined in two different ways in industry. One is a very large, massive mega project. It's much bigger than a typical project. Sometimes those get called programs just because to distinguish the difference in complexity and size and risk, et cetera, the level of executive attention that it gains. But also, if you start to get into the PMI definition, a program is a bit more than that. A program is typically a group of coordinated smaller projects coordinated to achieve a larger objective. So whereas a project has, pieces of work to, deliverables that you have to produce to achieve one objective, a program often can be broken down into substreams or the program can be broken down into projects. And there's a number of projects that need to be delivered to support the goal of the program. So let me give you an example. A project might be I need to build a new house. So you have the definition of what you're trying to achieve is pretty clear. There's a defined start and end date. You got to do it this season or before the winter hits, and you can manage that towards this objective. A program, though, contains many streams of related work and often is more strategically aligned. So a program might be I need to expand my company's operations into the Asian market. So there's many projects that might be part of that. One might be finding and building or outfitting a new office facility and hiring local staff. That might be one project within the program. Another one might be some legal work to establish contracts and licensing of your products and services so you can operate in the new country. Another program might be a marketing campaign to grow some business in the new country. So there may be many projects within that larger strategic initiative of expanding into the Asian market. So the program of Asian expansion is made up of a bunch of coordinated projects to achieve the higher level strategic objective. PMOs are responsible for both projects and programs typically. Within the enterprise. They may get, the programs because of their size and risk and their impact often get more attention than the projects do, but certainly they all are under the purview of the PMOs within that group. Portfolios is a little bit of a different thing. A portfolio is a collection of projects, like a program is a collection of projects, except a program has projects that are related because they're trying to achieve this common objective. Portfolios are just random projects thrown together that may have no common objectives whatsoever. What makes them collectively a portfolio is they have, for example, typically shared resources. So you would say this is the portfolio of projects for the IT group in an organization. So you may have an IT project portfolio, and that could consist of server installs and upgrades and software refreshes and custom software development and integration and supporting IT work for various operational divisions of the business. There's all kinds of stuff slapped together, but the individual projects themselves in the portfolio aren't necessarily related, except they're all being done by the IT group where we have limited resources. So portfolio management allows the organization to schedule and juggle these various competing priorities in the portfolio to try and achieve the maximum overall benefit to the business itself. Sometimes that function is done by the PMO, or sometimes it's done by some IT project steering committee or some larger group looking after it. But one could argue that even though it's not called a PMO, might be a PMO-like function that's supported by that committee. Are there any other thoughts or questions? Last chance. Going once? Twice? Okay. Well, I wanted to thank everybody for their time today. We host these webinars on a regular basis. These are free. We do them as give back to the community, and we want to make sure that we give you the best that you can so that everybody feels they've gotten valuable use of their time commitments. So today's was on PMOs. The next one that we're going to be hosting is 1 month from now in February, and it's on agile contracts. Another one in March is going to be on our annual PM paper competition. So we'll be talking about past winners and what's required to submit papers and the cash prizes and other awards that you can win. And then we're going to have one in April, just announced, on mindfulness for projects. So looking at the concept of mindfulness, being thoughtful and focused and etc. So that'll be announced in April. We do these monthly throughout the year. If you're interested in signing up for them, please go to www.procept.com. That's Procept.com. Look at the events calendar on the right-hand side of the screen and click on any of these particular webinars that are of interest to you. We'd love to have you aboard. Thank you very much, everybody. This video will be this webinar will be recorded and posted to YouTube, and it should be up there within 24 hours or so. If you missed some of the screens or you wanted to take some notes and you didn't get a chance, the entire visuals plus the audio recording will be available publicly on YouTube. Thank you very much for your time.